How you doing, Justice?
Sure. I'm okay. It's been a week. It's been clown week, and it certainly feels like it.
Well,
Um,
there we
so
go.
how are you doing?
I'm fine. I figured I'd dress for the end of Clown Week.
Hell yeah, that's a sweet clown shirt. That's dope.
Yeah.
I like that.
Of course, you don't know the band, but if any of the viewers do, shout it out in the comments. There'll be a prize for you. I'll say your name.
Ooh,
It's
best
a
kind
big,
of prize.
it's a pretty, it's
Acknowledgement,
a
validation.
external validation. Yeah. So again, apologies. I'm in my large room downstairs. My girls have decided that that's where they were going to sleep last night because it's the coolest place in the house, and Hannah is currently snoring. So
That's all right. We
yeah.
can't hear you.
All right.
This morning, I invited one of my Toronto friends, who Six had the pleasure of meeting for the first time about 5 minutes ago, Dandy Alexander. Dandy Alexander is a burlesque performer, has also dabbled in his fair share of clowning and tomfoolery. So I figured, what a phenomenal way to end Clown Week than with actual clowns. So before we get into clowning, I decided we would go back and revisit Good Kid again from the ABV podcast.
Ready? This next song we had a hard time naming, but we decided on Alchemist. And,
Yeah. We're-
might be our least metal song. But here we go.
Don't say that. You're not winning me any arguments.
Give it up and give it up and give it away. Well, you were barely alive when you learned that day. You cut off so much, finally remained. Well, you knew that there was still a way. Cry, I came and try anyway. Well, you got 'em back, but then you had to pay. You cut off so much, finally remained. Well, you knew that there was still a way. But that's only planner. Now this is your only. Now this is your only plan on and now this is yours. But that's fine. It's all you've ever known, a single fate of mine. But you won't ever let it go. When you found the answer, and you were there alone. You left the door unopened when you knew that you would want more. Give it up and give it up and give it away. Well, you were barely alive when you learned that day. You cut out so much, hardly remains. Well, you knew that there was still a way. This is your only plan on a now. This is your only. Now this is your only plan on a now. This is yours. That's fine. You force it to yield. You forge it to the lines. You let your catalyst be your shield, and everyone would say that it all was finished years ago, but you will stay, and you won't ever let it go. When you found the answer, and you were there alone, you left the door unopened when you knew that you would want more. And again, you found the answer, and you were there alone. You left the door unopened when you knew that you would want more. And when you found the answer, and you were there alone, you left the door unopened when you knew that you would want more. And when you found the answer, and you were there alone, you left the door unopened when you knew that you would want more. Thank you.
And we're live. We're live with Dandy Alexander and Rose the Whiny Dog.
She's very whiny.
Oh, she's so pretty.
Oh, thank you. She tries her best. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, I am okay, which I think most of the time is like the top level people are getting to.
Right now?
So be happy for okay. I'm happy to be okay, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, always. We're really happy to have you on. The reason we decided to have you on today in specific is because we wanted to make sure that we ended Clown Week with a proper clown.
Proper clown.
Oh my god. What, like, who else has been your clown week so far then? What is your clown journey
Just
been
us.
so
Like
far?
literally just us being asses. We didn't have any clowns really lined up. You know, it's kind of crazy. You forget about the silly fun weeks that are going on, mixed with like I don't know, the fear of apocalypse and the earth blowing up, and
Yeah.
and listening to some announcements today about how schools are going to go back in. Yet we are in Windsor and still stuck in phase 2. So
Apparently Toronto's going to phase 3 sometime soon. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I just feel like people keep saying, like, things are more fine, and I'm sitting at home going, like, but
how
Are they though?
are they? I don't know.
and how will phase 3 kind of affect you? Will you be able to start doing performances that are in limited numbers again, or kind of?
So I think that for a lot of
sorry,
people-
for our viewers also, can you give us a little bit of background of your performing and what it is that you do, and encapsulate it all nicely into some words that I probably couldn't come up with?
Sure. So I think for me, performing has kind of always been. I kind of view myself as an amateur performer in a big way, and that's because I have a day job and I do a lot of my performing outside of that. So for the most part, like, gigs have not been my lifeblood. They've certainly been key at times, but they're not my everyday. And most of the performance that I've done has been live shows, has been performances, somewhere like Revival Bar, which has like 90% of the burlesque shows in the city. So for me, a lot of my performing is burlesque, but if you really ask me, that comes from clown, and that comes from a lot of my time at a show called the Lunacy Cabaret, which is also on hiatus at the moment because everything's on hiatus at the moment. But they've been going for about 10 odd years with the sort of circusy sideshow performers, a lot of really weird, edgy, not edgy as in like, but I think when you're in a clown space, you want to push on the absurdity of the reality that you live in. So that's the kind of thing we would do a lot there. So with phase 3, I think the thing is, live theaters are not happening. Live shows are not happening anytime soon. Which is really hard, I think, because when I look at what shows are and how you get the most out of the show, it is almost entirely about the audience. And people have been doing a great job putting on Zoom shows and figuring out, the question is now, like, how do you get that audience enthusiasm to the people who are performing on a live stream? And you have so many barriers to that, just like how many voices can you tag in at once? How many people do you want to have messaging it? Whatever, all these different things that are really hard. So I think the thing is, I don't think people are expecting to get back into a theater anytime soon and do shows. And if you are a clown or a magician and the kind who does a birthday party, probably not going to be happening for you anytime soon. But people are resilient, and I know that, first of all, one of the great clowns I know, Bella Magic, she is doing a lot of shows. She's been running a show called Kitchen Cabaret. It's her and her Nona sitting in the kitchen, showing off different artists from all sorts of areas. But I think what she's doing right now is she's planning to do pop-up shows around the city, so you can get in touch with her and say, I would love to have a clown or a performer, at this corner of town. Yeah. And they'll make it happen. They'll show up, they'll do something weird in that corner. And that's the kind of thing that, to me, speaks to, like, the best case scenario for clowning for this kind of performance is we're going to show up somewhere. We're probably going to be a little out of place. We're going to break you out of the patterns that you've been, and put a little weird magic in your daily life,
A little bit more of a public spectacle, eh?
Yeah. Public spectacle is a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think, the way you touched on kind of the absurdity of it, and I think the audience, I was curious about all those things. So first of all, I'm trying to come up with a great question because you answered so many of the great things I was going to ask. It's like, how did it change performing and all this? So I want to go back to a little bit of the lunacy, and you kind of, that you chatted about. What is your character? How did it develop? And you said, it kind of started from drag and then, clowning to drag, right?
Yeah.
Clowning to drag. So.
Yeah, I think that, it is interesting to me, starting from drag, really, I grew up in the Northeast Caribbean, not at exactly a very open place for sexuality, and I, at 16, I got to go to my uncle's drag party. My uncle had spent a bunch of time in Toronto. So that was really, to me, the birth of, where I did start performing, and that is with... I had a Paris Hilton costume. This was right around when Paris Hilton got arrested. If I could dig it up, I know I got her to autograph it the one time I ran into her. The one time I ran into Paris Hilton. It doesn't happen for me like that. But yeah, it did start with drag, and that got me into Lunacy. Lunacy had been a long-running show, mostly made of just performers in Toronto entertaining themselves, and it started getting this following where people would actually show up to the show in costume. You had a monster-themed show that I think was my first one. And my mentor, Dave McKay, a.k.a. Sketchy the Clown, he was in that as a sort of Frankenstein type, and they got somebody else to marry him by the end of the show. It's just a variety show with a sort of a thread line through it. But I was there dressed as a vampire or something. And you did that often enough, and I think Sketchy looked at me and he said, "Hey, we're getting a corps together to be the Lunacy Cabaret dancers," and that was really my entrance into dance, into being a clown, into being a moving body on stage, adding to the story, and I had so much fun with that because it was a space where we could do weird things. My first role was I was like a drag goth princess, and we were in a battle with cheerleaders. We were trying to fight it over in the school, and we all died in a school shooting at the end of the show. And my role, one of my key roles, was to scream very loudly at the beginning of that. And, when you hear about that, when you think about that, it's like, I don't know. I often wonder how many people want to see a school shooting, but also those are things I grew up with that being a thing that people thought I was gonna do at some point, Yeah.
Me too. I was gonna do it too.
Most likely to totally lose it and take it out on everyone around you.
It's honestly now flattered. Back then, a little concerned.
No, but that's the thing, you can't pull these things apart. I grew up what was the first video game I was playing? Doom. Everyone was afraid Doom was a school shooter game, these things, I really think that when it comes to these things, there's a real good way to interface with scary topics like this, and I think it is to kind of put yourself in the vulnerable position to understand what your sort of stakes in that risk are, to understand if it really affects you or not. And I've seen comedy that does not, that to me fails that standard. I think there are a lot of people who want to make jokes about racism and then they end up reproducing racism. I don't think that they're bad people for it, but I think that is not good art in my mind, because your target is unfocused, right? Your message is unclear. I'm really not sure if we had a message with the school shooting bit other than high school's hell, kids, and lunacy dancers die at the end of every show. That's midway through. Yeah. Or midway through.
Well, it's interesting trying to take on topics like that, and literally trying to analyze, whether it's funny, how it's funny, and thinking about it, because especially right now, there's a lot more, microscopes on everything that we're doing and everything that we're kind of seeing and saying. So it's neat to kind of think that, clowning hasn't just been literally, fucking clowning. There's been a little bit of thinking behind it.
No, yeah, I think so. One thing I keep thinking of is it's called bouffon. It's this idea of, it's a really sort of dirty, exaggerated, usually physically distorted sort of clown. Often they're in groups, they clump together, and it's really great to see on stage. You'll see like 5 or 6 people really tightly packed together, and they'll all shuffle along into stage together as a mass of people. And the way I always loved it, Sketchy would always tell me, your ideal bouffon situation, usually the bouffon character represents kind of an outsider, somebody who's been mistreated, somebody who is, for a good reason or a bad reason, ostracized from society. And the idea behind bouffon, behind being sort of really being somebody who society has rejected. That's the clear barrier to me. Good or bad, society rejected you. And you are there with your bouffon buddies, the people who do understand you, to perform in a way that holds a mirror to the society that rejected you. And the way Sketchy always explained that to me is, you want to go to town, do a show, and have all the people who hate and rejected you laugh at you. Then, when they go home, realize that the whole bit was about them and how they're a horrible person, so they have a heart attack and die of guilt. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has to hit them after the show, though. It has to. The reality of it has to be like, fuck, they were poking fun at me the whole time.
Yeah.
And we were laughing at it. Yeah. That's kind of. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts, so there's a little bit of that that's kind of also runs with some of my friends and some of their art shows as well. So
right.
It's funny. Justice, sorry.
No, it's cool. I was just like, how often does that actually happen? Like, I wonder sort of about the self-awareness of audiences at times, especially ones who already laughed at the joke. I feel like there's like almost a barrier. Like, you don't want to admit that reality.
No. And I think that is really, God, especially when we talk about today, like real talk, the whole fiasco in America is killing a lot of comedy and exaggeration. The joke is The Onion is going out of business. You can't write jokes more than the reality already is. And the thing that to me makes all of that stuff work, all the Donald Trump stuff work, is when you're invested in somebody like a far right leader like that, you stop taking the world and fitting your understanding of the world to the ideas you have. You start taking the ideas, the information you get about the world, and fitting it to your knowledge, to what you already believe. And somebody who is sitting with that doesn't take theater and says, what does this say about me? It's, what does this say about you? What does this say about the world? How does this fit my preconceived notions?
Right.
So I think the reality is, and this is a thing I've come to as a person who believes a lot in the challenging and transformative power of art, is there's nothing that the larger machine of culture won't eventually take and turn against you. People think that Bob Marley is about chill times, but Bob Marley was a revolutionary figure in a lot of ways, a really challenging, dangerous political figure to a lot of people in Jamaica, and he risked his life with that. So I think the question you're asking is an important one, is that's a nice idea, but how does that really function? And the thing I think of that really shows how that functions is Sketchy ran for several years, 10 years, Festival of Clowns in Toronto. You could see just on different days a bunch of different clown acts from all sorts of parts of the world. And I can't remember what the bit they were doing was, but it was not long after Rob Ford was city councilor. I think they were getting some municipal funding. I don't even remember what the joke was, but I just remember that at the end of some sketch, a city rep looked to Sketchy and said, "Do you get city funding?" We'll see about that next year. So it's like the real, like, you know, yeah, you're not going to bring down the government, but you're definitely, like, you're going to
ruffle some feathers.
They
Yeah.
don't want to fund people
No.
who even make fun of them.
No. I mean, we see it a lot here. You know, to bring it back a little bit, you know, I know you're in Toronto and it happens in that larger city, and sometimes it goes a little bit more kind of unnoticed. It gets swept underneath the rug. But we have a graffiti artist here, Denial. Dan Bombardier does a lot of stuff, and Dan holds very similar views as I. We don't really like our mayor. We don't think that there's a lot being done by him. There's no accountability. There's no really transparency. He also sits on the police board. There's a whole lot of like intertwined bullshit. And he's done some great graffiti, you know, with, you know, Bart Simpson writing "Dilkin sucks," and, you know, obviously this is something that gets reposted and stuff like that. And city people, yeah, they don't want to fund those things. So sometimes those kind of artists that are actually pushing you to think about that community and society that you're in, somehow down the road kind of get shafted a little bit by that same community that they're kind of poking a little bit of fun at.
Yeah. I guess the thing that this really means to me is, like, you know, I think that part of this, it just does have to do with capital. It has to do with capitalism. It has to do with money. And, you know, Lunacy Cabaret was never a huge money-making enterprise, right? Best case scenario, I think we got a review in some relatively mainstream publication that called it a punk rock Cirque du Soleil, which is pretty accurate.
That's pretty awesome.
You know, you had highly skilled people, you had weird lowbrow comedy. It's, in my opinion, one of the toughest stand-up comedy rooms you could do, because they will yell, "Take off your pants" to you at any time that they're bored, and it happens quick. So, sorry?
You just take them off then, right?
I've seen people who have plans for this. Sometimes they got pants under pants because they know they know the room that they're going in. And once you've like pulled that off, I think the audience is sufficiently chastised. They're like, "Oh, damn, he knows where he is." But, you know, the thing that made that whole show magic to me was never really like how much funding we got or anything like that. Some of the best times of my life, I was living just upstairs from the band people. I was living upstairs in the same house as Sketchy, and, you know, those productions are community deals, and they don't have to be, you know, the most subversive thing on the planet. If you get a couple of people together to put something meaningful together, something that means something to them, you don't need to be published or, you know, reach 1 million people or make $1 million. You just have to make a space where people feel like, yeah, I fit in here. My voice has a space in here. I can do something interesting with this, you know, I can be somebody here. And that's the art I really think is so important these days, you know. Six is talking about, like, graffiti on the walls. You know, nobody, like, yeah, they can criminalize that, they can brush it off, but nobody can take that away from you. That's people talking to people, not mediated through a record label, a film company, you know. And I think when we talk about the kind of art we're doing these days, that's the art that matters the most. It's just the kind of thing that comforts the people around you, and if it ever reaches the people who who are very comfortable right now, it would make them uncomfortable. Yeah. You know? But I think your first goal has to be, who is the people I'm bringing, who's my community, who am I making this for? Yeah. You know?
Yep.
Yeah, that's very apt, actually, and I think rings very true for a lot of people, so I appreciate you saying that. Well, one of the things that we like to do, sort of as we are leading up to the end of the show here, is ask our guests what they do sort of on a daily basis that keeps them optimistic. So we'd like to pose that question to you.
So, I've been thinking about this for a while. My sister and I have been doing a little writing lesson thing online, just working together. And a big part of that, I thinking, was like, what's an art process that works for you? And, how do you actually get to produce stuff? And the two things we came on were, to actually make good art, you got to feel good. And you also just have to do it, even, like, to make art at all, you have to do it even when it doesn't feel good. And those are contradictory. But the thing that we came up with the sort of principle we came out of was, I'm showing up today for tomorrow. It's not that doing anything, literally anything, whether that's going to the gym, writing a page, writing 3 pages, like any one thing that you do today makes tomorrow easier. And that's the kind of the thing that I'm sticking to. Whatever it is that I'm going through or doing, I try to remember, it isn't, when you're doing the things to take care of yourself, it isn't going to be that it pays off today. It's going to pay off tomorrow, and it's going to add up tomorrow when you do it again, right? So it really is I really think it is about being kind to yourself, really understanding that the things are hard now. They do not feel rewarding now all the time. But giving yourself a little room will give yourself a little more room. It's really hard to do. Even my best, my singing teacher, when I got in touch with her, was like, yeah, all the practice stuff I told you is going out of the window right now. I can't manage it. Just do what you can. Literally just do what you can and try to stay connected with people. That's the best. It really is. I think there's almost no point to anything else in society, honestly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just connecting with each other and the social bonds that we create. You're 100% right that that's sort of all that matters. Before we let you go, one more thing that I want to ask you, Andy, is what are you looking forward to? Just what in the future is super bright for you?
I'm planning on seeing people, like, at a reasonable distance. That's the thing. No. I think that, the thing that makes this bright is that there are great shows and stuff that are still happening. There are still people who are making these things happen. And two in my mind I want to shout out right now is Babia Majora. They run Fuck Shit Up, which is a trans non-binary cabaret. It's very open to a lot of people with different gender expressions and gives them a platform for it, which I think is amazing. And very similarly is House of Kings. I think Zaki Lime, I don't know how they got some funding, but I think they're running maybe like a house sort of like competition for drag kings or drag in general. And I think that, this sort of like serious scene is brewing in Toronto, this serious drag scene. And I think that is going to, especially Canada's Drag Race, it's expanding outwards. I really have hope that we are like witnessing people who are feeling adversity and taking whatever emotion they have and giving us an image with it,
Yeah.
Showing us their world, showing us what they need. And we're in a great position to hear them. I'm honestly just happy to, right now, absorb those messages and figure out how to support people.
Absolutely. That beautifully put. Dandy Alexander, thank you so very
Thank
much
you so
for
much.
joining
Yeah.
us this morning.
This was so much fun. Thank you for having me on.
Anytime, absolutely. And thank you to all the folks who tuned in this morning. We're taking Monday off, just as a reminder to everybody at home.
Yeah.
And we'll catch you next week.
Have a great long weekend and stay safe.